Again, we had to pivot from a panel discussion to a fireside chat. So let's listen to a discussion about open doors for smart construction and PropTech, powered by Bim World MUNICH. And the chat will be moderated by Maciej Markowski, the co-founder and CRO at Space OS. And the guest is Kristin Stammel, CEO and co-founder of BIM World Munich.
We are detecting via the Innovation World Cup interesting startup companies, tech companies, which are working in the field of IoT. And the topic of BIM is very, very close to IoT and the digitalization of the whole AEC business. AEC means the architectural and engineering construction business. I have someone with us, Maciej Markowski. He is from the company Space OS. He is jumping in for another colleague who was not able to join us. So Maciej, thank you for jumping in so fast. Could you just make a short introduction about yourself?
Absolutely. Maciej Markowski, co-founder of Space OS. We are an end-to-end operating system for workspaces, meaning it's a tenant engagement platform enabling anyone to use their smartphone as a remote control in any kind of office environment. And on top of that, it's a leasing platform and a data analytics platform allowing particularly asset managers understanding what's happening in their buildings and how they can make better decisions. As a last note on myself, my background is very much in real estate. I worked for AECOM, the big engineering company out of US, and I then worked for JLL and CBRE in London, and I was a partner at Cushman Wakefield, heading the workplace strategy team for Central Eastern Europe. Construction, not so much my forte, but real estate and PropTech very much so.
Okay, very, very, very good. I mean, I have here a claim, property as a service, and that is at least exactly where you are heading in or where you are positioned with your company. This will be something we are looking in a bit on a later stage of our discussion, because I really want to go to the whole process of the digitalization of the construction and at least of the real estate industry. Therefore, I have prepared just a short presentation about the BIM world and the environment, which companies and which topics are behind the topic of BIM. What is BIM at least? I want to start this short presentation. Please, Mr. Markowski, stay tuned. So I need now 5 minutes roundabout for that PowerPoint. And then we are heading back directly to a discussion. And I'm looking forward, because that's really a very interesting topic you're focusing on. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will start now my short presentation. Give me an introduction about the BIM world, and at least at first, what is BIM? And important is because you see directly here again such a three-dimensional building. It's not just 3D. The process of BIM, one result could be a nice digital twin or a 3D building, but the BIM stands for Building Information Modeling, and this is a whole process which starts directly in the planning phase and goes then at least till the maintenance of a building and the facility management, where then Mr. Markowski is coming in. So, and this whole area, which is really wide, from the planning to the realization of a building and then to the maintaining of a building, this is at least part of that BIM world we are representing since 5 years now in Munich. We had last year close to 8,000 visitors, more than 200 exhibitors. In this year, clear, like everyone is going hybrid, so there will be a physical event in this year, but with less attendees. So we are expecting around about 2,000 people a day, which is a lot, because we rented a big venue and thought it's possible for us to get 2,000 people in. I hope that a lot of people from Poland could join us at that time. Today, it will be a bit of a problem regarding the topic of the quarantine, which is behind if you travel to Germany, or perhaps we are even have a higher infection rate. So we are expecting 2,000 people a day, and we have a lot of presentations. And at least the most important thing for you is now more the content. I will talk about the impressions I could skip, because I think I will have such a good conversation with Markowski that I don't want to lose too much time on my PowerPoint slides. Important, perhaps, the visitors of this show are very, very high level. So a lot of CEO and C-level people who could make decisions. That's important for our exhibitors, at least. And at least you see here the growth and the interest. I mean, this is important for the startups, the interest in this area of building information modeling. What is about building information modeling? We are talking about machine learning, AI, which is a very, very hot topic today. That was 5 years ago, no topic at all. How could we use AI systems, for example, to analyze point clouds? So you think about you don't have only buildings which are realized today or which are already in a planning phase. You have also buildings which are already there. So, and you have to scan them and you have to bring them also in the 3D model. And this is at the moment one of the hottest topics in the application area we have, besides the planning phase, that we have to respect all the existing infrastructure and all the existing real estate buildings, and how to bring them now as fast as possible into a digital twin, how to scan them in a proper way, and then perhaps how to use for these point clouds, which are just a lot of point information, to extract at least automatically a 3D model or even a BIM object. And this is something which is very, very interesting. And we see a lot of startups, for example, working in that field, coming perhaps from totally different areas, coming from the medical, optical medical area, or coming from the automotive area, where we saw startups which are doing before, which did before self-driving cars. And using their algorithms for the self-driving cars now to extract out of point clouds directly three-dimensional models or even BIM objects. So smart data, AI, machine learning, a very, very interesting thing you have to look in. Overall, you have to look in anyway in the construction industry, because this is one of the industries which is less digitized than all the other industries in the world, but it has a huge, huge opportunity and impact. Common data environment stands for this collaboration. So at least BIM is always about, at first, the capturing of data, then the collaboration of data, and then the visualization of data. And collaboration means that all the different facilities which are working on such a big construction project, on a lighthouse project, they have to collaborate in a way. They have to find a way. And the most common way is at least a cloud system where you have standards behind. And BIM is a dedicated standard. And if all partners in a big real estate project are committed on that standard, you could exchange the data sets. And this is very important for having then a sustainable digital twin in the future. The same is with big data and cloud solution providers. That's a bit the same of common data. Interesting also the whole world of IoT, where we are very heavily involved with our IoT Innovation World Cup. IoT is so huge from the opportunities in that field. You could use sensors in the building to detect early stage warnings to see, okay, how is the maintaining going on of the building, and especially then also for the facility management, a very interesting thing. Clear for the measurement of the first planning phase, you need geo-information modeling systems. Again, we are coming to the point cloud. At least we are talking then also about smart building technologies. And overall, you see, it's really a very interesting field where a lot of is going on, but as sooner that people are talking about the digitalization, as sooner we have to start with that. And this is already the planning phase or the scanning phase of such a real estate in infrastructure. If we don't do that in a proper way, we'll have a problem to use then the BIM models, all these collaboration opportunities in a good way. Later on in our discussion, we will focus on the topic smart construction, smart infrastructure, and then also property as a service. So totally new business models will perhaps appear for real estate owners. What could come up there? I think there were the things we saw till yet with rental office space and so on was just the beginning of a big business opportunity in the real estate business, and a big change in the real estate business at least. The most topics I mentioned already. That was a short overview. I hope you saw what's in this topic of BIM, building information modeling, and the later stage is then building information management. And there we are coming directly then to the facility management. And I want to stop here my presentation, and I will want to come back to my colleagues here, which are in my room here. And I can't see them at the moment, but I think they are still around. So give me a sign that you are alive. I could raise the first questions here to Mr. Markowski. So Mr. Markowski is not around. I can't hear him at the moment, but now I think he is back. Brilliant. Hi, nice to meet you again.
Disconnected, and I think I heard your whole presentation, but I think as a participant rather than.
Okay, brilliant. But that's good at least, because then you're aware of what we are focusing at the moment. And perhaps you could give us already a hint about your activity and where is it fitting in? And or perhaps you have to add perhaps a comment from your previous jobs you did for CBR, for example.
Sure. Well, what we do as a startup, or I guess a scale up, we're covering I think 11 million square feet now of space. Oh. But we probably fit towards the end. So we provide this kind of a missing layer of information of what actually people do in the building, as in the kind of food they order, how they rate meeting rooms, or how happy they are, or how safe they feel in that building, particularly during the pandemic. So I think we're in an interesting way we can be a source of data regarding the soft area of what's happening in the building. I think the future is us probably integrating to BMS or Vim systems and really. I think that this kind of a digital twin of an office building, it is the future. There's no way to avoid it. We typically work with existing buildings, but we did have cases where we were involved early when the building was being constructed, which is beneficial because then we can affect things like availability of, say, API for access control or elevators or any kind of Bluetooth readers. So just making the building more interactive and allowing our platform and app to integrate more broadly and deeper with the building.
Coming from the IoT area, here there's already a question. How do you overcome these walled gardens? You know, all these different facility enablers, door openers, windows openers, window alarm systems. They're all working on different standards, on different RF standards, or radio frequency standards. How do you overcome that problem, at least?
Well, I think we're probably yet to overcome it. I think that's a fair answer here. I mean, we are already integrating quite a few things that you can find in the building. So whether it's an FM system or any kind of booking system or anything kind of access control, HVAC or some of the sensors even. But at the end of the day, anything that has an API can be integrated with, and then it doesn't really matter too much how exactly it works in the background. What we try to achieve is three things really. So number one, to provide a unified UX. So all of those crazy things that you have in the background, users cannot have 20 apps. They cannot have 30 systems to access. And I'm speaking about end users, but any kind of property manager, I'm sure they would appreciate their life being easier as well, and having smaller number of dashboards and kind of a one place command control center. I'm describing a bit of a dream here. I am aware of that. But at the same time, it is something we're heading to, where really your phone is a remote control for that space. Yeah. We also try to be a platform to connect as many things as possible. I don't think we've gone all the way. So there's a lot of things we have not yet integrated. Anything related to water usage or energy, we have not been touching that. The gap we perceived was around the ease of use of office building for end users, and also a complete lack of connection between the landlord and the tenant as well as understanding of the landlord of what kind of actions can really improve the experience of everyone in the building, which in turn allows them to keep them there longer and attract new ones. There's a whole topic of shorter leases coming and all that, but that's, I think, maybe for another conversation.
Coming to the landlord, I believe, the topic of BIM is something which is around since many years. We are talking for many years about the digitalization of the real estate business. The problem was till yet that, the real estate business, especially in Germany, was going so well that there was no need. If you are earning money anyway, and millions, you don't have to do a stupid digitalization process and deliver at least to the landlord while you are delivering the real building or the digital twin. But I think now coming to Green Deal, coming to the European Commission, which is driving at the moment sustainability heavily. And you with your operation system, you could do a lot, I think, in sustainability, right? So I think there is a huge opportunity that also the landlords are now coming up and saying, hey, yes, BIM, if I order a building and the building is BIM related or BIM standardized, then I think it could be a value, and in the future, hopefully a quality signal or signage at least to get even more out of the building, also in a revenue or in a business model. What do you think about that?
That's absolutely right. And I think you couldn't go wrong investing in real estate for the longest time, right? Half a century or so. And I think now, let's say if you're an office building owner, an asset manager, imagine the situation you're in. So number one, the demand for office space is likely declining because we've all experienced working from home. Pinterest paid $90 million to get out of a deal. Twitter allowed employees to work from home as long as they want. So the demand is clearly decreasing. Number two, retail is hit even harder, which means players like Westfield are turning, say, House of Fraser, which was unthinkable in London, now into office spaces. And, it was one of the old truths of real estate that retail always brings more money than office per square meter. That's no longer true. Completely not true. So the supply of office space is also increasing. Then number three, we have the short demand for short leases exploding. Very, very few companies, including large corporates, feel comfortable signing a 5-year lease, or the average lease in US.
Or less. Right.
Correct. But in US, the average lease prior to pandemic was 7 years. So, it was really the creation of an office building was a little bit like creating a financial instrument where it ends up with a yield of sorts. It can be sold and a new one can be funded. It was a very, very smooth machine, part of the financial markets. And of course, number four, and this is, I think, what you focused on most, is sustainability and the necessity to start tracking a lot of those things. So, some of them 12 months from now, if I'm not mistaken. So it's all coming, and none of those things can be handled well without technology. I fully agree. Like there will be huge winners and losers, right? So a safe building will be a building that is easy to fill, and a building that isn't safe or just is not perceived as safe will struggle. On top of that, if you don't handle sustainability well, you will be hurt in a couple of years.
Couple of years, yeah.
And same with shorter leases. If you have a process that you do once every 5 years, now if you do it every year, because I think 12 months will be probably a standard eventually, you need to streamline it. You need to digitize it. Otherwise, you will pay tremendously. And on top of that, and I know I'm drifting a little bit away from your question, but that's probably also due to my background, so I apologize for that. But once we have shorter leases, we have much more renewals rather than hunting for new ones. So to keep somebody, you need to have very good information about them. So that's the soft layer I was talking about. But there's plenty of the hard layer, and sustainable buildings definitely will be among the more successful ones here. So there's a huge change coming, and I think BIM is at the center of it all. And understanding what's happening in your building and how it's performing is becoming an absolute necessity, and really no longer a nice to have. And my last sentence, I think, is becoming kind of table stakes. It's not that you will stand out having it, but you will just really need to have it eventually.
I agree totally. I mean, it's directly you are talking about out of my heart of digitalization of the construction industry, or then later in the later stage of the real estate industry, sustainability. So in 2050. But already in 2050, I have to say, we have to be carbon zero, so carbon neutral. And I mean, this is for many other industries, it's far away. But for the construction industry, it's not far away. And it's really a topic which is now perhaps driving also a landlord in the planning phase already. How could I generate a mostly sustainable building already today? And this is not only the consumption of energy, it's not only the production of waste at the building process. It's also about the sustainability later on. So some people are talking about that the building becomes a kind of a safe for infrastructure material, a material bank. So a real estate infrastructure as a material bank, because in 20 years, perhaps we have a problem with wood, we have a problem perhaps with steel, you never know. But then you need to know where is this material in the building. And there the people are talking about cradle to cradle approach, really to address already in the planning phase, where are these materials in and how could they be reused at least after 20 or 30 years. What do you think about that?
This question, I think we can speak for half a day about it, and it's a fascinating.
Yeah, we have only 20 minutes left. So
I'll start by quoting Jeremy Myerson, and I think it's the scariest sentence a construction industry can ever hear, and this is that the most sustainable building is one that is never built. And effectively, I think that there's plenty to be done. There will be a huge job with repurposing buildings and making them more sustainable. You're absolutely right about the necessity of tracking of the cradle to cradle. I mean, it's already there in, say, furniture industry or carpeting. I think it's coming for office buildings. I don't necessarily think we will run out of materials, because so far technology always proves we find something new. And it was the same with energy. So in a way, if you look 100 years back, we thought we will run out of things to burn. Unfortunately, this is still burning that we're talking about. It never happened because we always came up with some new way to do this. But I think it is an absolute necessity, and considering the impact real estate industry has on climate change, it will be hugely important, and there will be a huge push towards changing that. So the role to play is tremendous, and I think the real estate industry can be the heroes or the villains of our story as humans. And I know these are big words, but I think it is true. I love all the new technologies that are going into buildings. I love the idea of really knowing what is where in the building, and also just to be able to use it as kind of a mine in the future. But we have plenty of buildings existing, and I think that is a whole new challenge. And I don't think there are great solutions in place now for what to do with some of those existing buildings and how to use them well and how to make them sustainable.
That's an interesting topic. I learned a lot about the companies who are involved in our Bim World, and I just had a chat with a company from Austria. They are doing big projects in hospitals. And what they do there is just scanning the whole infrastructure of that hospital to make it more efficient. and to make it sustainable at least, and to know where are all the pipes, where are all the lines, where do I have to refresh the lines, and I mean, this is really, and perhaps you know this famous hospital in Sweden, the Karolinska Hospital, which was also rebuilt now totally in BIM. It's one of the biggest BIM hospital projects, I think, in the world. And the added values which are coming out of such a digital twin, they are tremendous. I mean, everyone who is talking perhaps in that World Summit about navigation system, indoor navigation and so on. I mean, indoor navigation system is just one side effect of a totally digital twin. You know exactly where are all the hotspots, and based on that, you could do easily triangulation and object detection and whatever. So it's really we have to start very, very early in the planning phase to become really a digital twin, and this is something to have not a 3D model. It's much more, because every piece you have integrated there, every BIM object is at least calculating for itself and calculating with all the other information. And based on that, you could do predictive things. And based on that, you could even do for the government predictive things, how much energy waste will produce this building, and so on and so on. Did you have in your previous activities, I mean, working for CBR or working in the real estate industry in London, I mean, I know, for example, UK is much beyond in BIM. Yeah, so we have some countries which are first developed regarding building information modeling and the standard behind. So I know that UK is in front, and also France is quite well developed in that field. Did you have the chance to become in contact with those topics already at that time, or was it too early?
I'll try to touch your previous point a little bit before going into this one. So everything that you described about that hospital and the possibilities that buildings with well implemented BIM have, absolutely. I mean, we see the kind of value we can provide to a new modern building versus an old building. The differences are huge, right? From wayfinding to ability to provide information about air quality to anything really. So I fully agree. We kind of, and I hope I'm not very frustrating jumping to kind of older spaces that already exist. We very often deal with buildings that are from 1980s, if not from 19th century. So very often we think, okay, what is a cost-effective way to put a digital layer on top, enabling as many things as possible to be done from your phone? I mean, if you're an office worker in a typical building, it's really surprising how it's harder to report an issue about, I don't know, a broken door than it is to complain about a package from Amazon being misplaced, or why is it easier to order from across the town than from downstairs? And how come, you know, it's easier to find somebody on LinkedIn who specializes in, I don't know, robotics or BIM than somebody who may be sitting just behind you? So that's where we jump in with this kind of a digital layer without touching. And because I think this is how you enter, let me rephrase that, how you take an asset manager on a journey. You show them, look, you can do this, that is pretty cost effective, and you're gaining so much and you understand so much more. And once they get on that journey and also their skills improve and they start hiring people in this area, I think that's where the BIM can really make a bang. And I think maybe we're kind of an entry drug to the world of BIM for a lot of asset managers, so to speak. I'm afraid I did not in my London days. I probably dealt much more with occupiers. So I think we will be much better informed if you continue on that topic.
Mm-hmm. I mean, entry truck is a very good word because it fits very well to the operation systems, right? I mean, in the smartphone market, the operation systems are the entry truck at least, and the phones are at least just the object, and this without not big intelligence, and the intelligence is coming from the apps. So do you also believe that we will see in the future perhaps prefab buildings which are looking all perhaps in the office space area, which are looking all a bit the same. And the enhancement will be done by guys like you with your app OS system.
My father was an architect, and so is my my partner. So I think that would be a very sad world.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there is space for standardization because things will need to start becoming interchangeable. And I think car industry is not a bad example where you still have differences. Okay, cars look more alike in this decade than they did 60, 70, 80, 90 years ago, but there is still space for personal taste and design, while inside the interchangeability is pretty huge. So I think, yes, there is a Lego future, so to speak, but I think it doesn't have to be all, same concrete boxes for.
But this is already perhaps a hard statement for your father. So I think perhaps he will hit you tonight, because I mean, then he's becoming just a designer, right?
Well, it depends, right? Because no, not necessarily, because I think I'll quote another person. It was one of the most famous designers of Vitra who said, when you have constraints, you have a problem. And when you have a problem, you need to find solution. And you're never more creative than in such a situation. So he always, Mr. Ciccarelli, he always said, when it's a blank canvas, that's when you have a problem. But when there is a bunch of constraints, that's when part of your designer brand can really shine. So I wouldn't paint the future of cities as kind of boring design. I don't think that will be the case.
Okay, no, I was not talking about boring design. I was talking more about the market, how it is reflected in the US. For example, in the US, you have the construction companies, which are doing a lot of phases which are normally done in Europe by the architect, which are now done by the construction company. And at least the architect himself, he's for sure very, very important in the process, but he has more a design philosophy, right?
Mm-hmm. True, but I think there is a whole process, and different industries and skills grab different parts of it. So, I mean, if somebody loves that part and they are an architect, they can just get involved, work for a different company, so to speak.
Yeah.
So
Ajay, I just want to interrupt you because I just saw that my colleague Dietmar is around. He's the vice president of Hexagon. He's not visible, but he joined us via an audio call. So Dietmar, could you tell us something about you and Hexagon, perhaps in 1 minute introduction? We can hear him, yes. Dietmar? No, we can't hear him. So sorry, we follow up in our discussion. It would be a pleasure to have Dietmar in with us because he is there working for the whole field of Hexagon products. And for example, one Hexagon brand is Leica, one of the world leaders in scanning machines and also in working with point clouds and using them for doing at least BIM models, right? But honestly, he's not able to join in. So, but again, I raised this question because I have some topics behind in that field of pre-construction or prefab oriented buildings, because we saw now some developments coming from the US, coming from China, where people are building skyscrapers in 2 weeks, because everything is prefabbed. So the design is for sure done by an architect, but then the whole design was break down, and it was then able just to do prefab modules, and at least you saw just a kind of a skeleton, and then the modules were flying in, and and the skyscraper was ready, but everything else was prefab. So no waste anymore on the construction plant. The waste was done beforehand in a kind of an electronic manufacturing service. So they are coming from that field. So they are coming from the field of producing these pieces, and they adapted the process of building consumer electronic products to the real estate, or to at least to the construction industry. And this is a big trend, and there are miracles behind it, that companies like an IKEA and Google are all working on that field, at least to adapt the idea of consumer electronics to the construction industry. Did you saw also examples on your personal journey? I left him, but I have an answer for me by myself. You have to check if you are in startup. You have to check a startup which we know them since 5 years now. I know one of the founders quite very well. It's a company called Terra, based out of US, and one of the founders was before the CTO of Flextronics. So Flextronics is the second biggest electronic manufacturer service in the world, and they looked in the market and they thought, what could I do with my knowledge about manufacturing consumer electronics? How could I adapt that to other industries? And the first industry they saw was, oh, the shoe industry is not digitized. So let's start a startup in the shoe industry, and they invented the Crocs. 3 years later, they sold the Crocs for 500 million. And then they looked around and they thought, oh, the construction industry. There is no big optimization in the construction process. Let's look deeper into that. They found the company Terra. Today, I think they have more than 5,000 employees. After 5 years, they do a revenue of 1.8 billion. And they have big investments from SoftBank and so on and so on. So you could see there is a huge opportunity in this field, in the digitization of the construction market. And so at least that was something I wanted to know from Mr. Markowski, but I answered it by myself. And I think if there are entrepreneurs out there based out of Poland, for example, who are working in that field, please reach out to us. We could help to connect, I think, to the right guys there. And especially if you have experience in other fields, that's the most important thing. So the construction industry could use those existing experiences from other industries very well at the moment, as they have by their own not enough experience in the digitization process. It's interesting for them to use all the views from other industries to get deeper into that field. If I want to elaborate a bit more about the smart infrastructure and smart construction market, you have to be very, very close to the construction machines and construction industry if you want to integrate some of your ideas or concept of sensors, for example. I mean, every kind of sensor you are developing at the moment, which is perhaps for the healthcare market or for the automotive market, could perhaps used in a construction product or in a construction machine at least. And please think about that. It's an opportunity there. And perhaps in your market, you are already done and everyone knows your sensor and you're working very well in that field. For example, temperature measurement, humidity measurement, or also vibration detection. We are talking there, for example, about the construction health monitoring market. So really health monitoring of construction infrastructure, of buildings, to monitor them if they are still in a good shape. If, for example, an infrastructure, a bridge has a problem. I mean, since we had this big accident in Italy, all the public authorities are looking heavily in how could I monitor an infrastructure, a bridge, for example, or an infrastructure, a highway. So in that field, we see a lot of opportunities for companies which are not yet in this market, but which could come into the market. And again, you need, on the one side, you need the sensors. On the other side, you need also the transmission technologies. So you have to transmit it, at least in a way, this sensor information, but should go through stone, through water, through whatever. So for that, you can't use 2.4, for example, so Bluetooth, for example, or other standards based on that. Even GSM is not good enough for that. But if you are looking into narrowband IoT, LoRa, Sigfox, these new kind of low power radio frequencies, they are working.